and welcome to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You can tweet the Greater STL as Sports Network at Greater STL SN. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube at Greater STL Sports Network, or on our live account on Ustream at my Twitter account, rbowlesbyjr. We're going to talk some Cardinals. We're going to talk some Mizzou. We're going to talk pretty much everything St. Louis sports today. Not a whole lot else going on, but them things out there in the sports world. Deflategate's getting kind of old to me, so maybe we'll throw that in there. But going to talk a lot about St. Louis sports and what's going on as we go down to the playoffs. And the Blues had an injury that might be big, but which I didn't mention is what we're going to start off first, and that's with the Rams. And this stadium situation is just irking me, and I don't know why. I really shouldn't be worried about it, because there's nothing we can do. They kind of took all the power away from the people when they took the vote away, which might have been the smartest thing they ever done to help the stadium. But it just irks me that all these things are just happening so silently that you don't know what's really going on. You can be lied to, and that's all that Peacock and Blitz are doing until they really know what's going on. And that's really all the people are doing in LA, is stringing it along for people to get behind the movement so it can look like, hey, we need a team in Los Angeles, or hey, we really want this team in St. Louis. But it's obviously getting other people too, is Joe Buck, who was off Twitter for almost 2 years, decided to go on Twitter, and he also went to our newspaper after that. But we'll start with how he started on Twitter. My opinion, take the NFL out of downtown STL, and our downtown has no emphasis for change. Indy and Cincy have passed us by. It's bigger than football. Downtown St. Louis can't just be random restaurants, Cardinals baseball, and a truncated version of Ballpark Village. Then some Blues games. Life is needed. Kroenke not only has a chance to cash in LA, but a chance to punch a great city in the face that at one point he seemed to enjoy, especially when the Rams were relevant. Suck the life out of a team, run it down, raise prices and say it isn't supported in the league, and leave. Great example for the NFL to celebrate. Joke. An owner who wore a new Rams hat in Oxford and acts like he's been promoting the team while with Jerry. What an insult to good fans. Then he was asked. Now these were where you kind of like Joe Buck on Twitter, because most of these major stars ain't good stars, but important people in the positions they're in aren't going to answer questions. And he hasn't backed down at all from this, which is even great. When he was asked how better would a NFL be today if Shad Khan would have got to buy it, he said 100% better. Then someone said, I'm sure them owners who invested downtown appreciate being called random restaurants. He responds, well, sorry that you missed the whole point, by the way. I have a restaurant down there. Now someone put, Indy sucks. There isn't anything of substance during the summer. His reaction was, except they had a Super Bowl. Something St. Louis has never had. Then he goes, by the way, no support. In 2011, finished a stretch of 15-65. Let's sink that in. 15-65. 11 straight no-winning seasons. That's asking a lot from a fan. Now, the Sporting Nose ended up writing an article where they said that, as you heard in the comment, he said joke by the NFL celebrating Kroenke taking the team out of St. Louis and taking it to LA and doing everything he can to make it leave. That's what he was calling it, a joke. The Sporting News took it as he was calling Kroenke a joke. He responds saying, called the situation a joke. Misleading headline, thought the Sporting News was better than that. So not backing down at all, not even a hint. Then he was asked, then he was told, Rams belong in LA, sorry for your loss. But we want them back. We want back what was stolen from us. So please stop crying, the tantrum is silly. He responds, I get sentimental, but two wrongs don't make it right. TV ratings for St. Louis versus Tennessee preseason game, the first preseason game we had, a 10.3 16 share, and LA 1.57 share. which all it says is 10.3 million people, I guess. Washington, St. Louis, only 1.5 in LA, which just says LA ain't really supporting the Rams, but we're not going to support this thing. I don't know where he came up with that, which is, I mean, it is. At least people are watching that retardedness that goes on the field, and that's the wrong way to say it. It's not fun to watch the Rams in preseason. I just don't get it. Then he went on and said, you would have a case if people in St. Louis actually went to the games. This is someone said this to him. You would have a case if people in St. Louis actually went to the games. The fan base there is almost all Cardinals fans. He responds, last 10 years the Rams had the second worst record, our second lowest win total in the NFL, average less than 5 a year. Name the city, good luck. And then he went on to say, with the product, what city is selling like out that week after week? It is on the team to perform. Is it on the team to perform at all, or just on us fans to pack the house? Cards fans had some empty stadiums in the 90s, stadiums in the early 90s too. Fans pay money for entertainment. Hasn't been much by the Rams in the last decade. That's someone telling him. His response is, it was empty in the 70s too. I was there. When the Rams were rolling with Falk and Warner, it was a tougher ticket than the Cards. And then he said, let's not confuse the issue. St. Louis supports the Rams in spite of an owner who's inspicably trying to move the team. And the city is now willing to build a second stadium for an NFL team within 25 years. Unheard of, but no support untrue. Now basically he just laid it out, everything that's going on. Basically what I've been saying. Basically what anybody that kind of pays attention to this situation is that we're kind of in the background of Stan Kroenke. That we're in the background to the Rams organization in general, unless it's to sell tickets. Then they'll go advertise on the radio. Then they'll come on all the radio shows and say, hey, can you do this? You know, go buy some tickets, 314 Rams tickets or whatever the number is. I think that's the number, but who cares? But you see, I think it's really affecting anybody to have progression with no response. And what I mean by that is for Stan Kroenke to not even care what's going on in St. Louis. And he still has a lease here. And at least that he could go year for year for 9 more years. And that he's just ignored this situation. The only time he's paid attention to the St. Louis Rams was when they had a little rumble out there in Oxnard with the Cowboys. That's the only time you've seen Stan Kroenke doing anything to represent St. Louis in any way. And it was funny, as I was just reading stories up on it, and I got some more Joe Buck stuff, and then we'll move on to some more stadium stuff, and blah, blah, blah. But Camp Cole, Missouri, where Stan Kroenke is from, they've sent him a letter wanting a sum of, I think it was $60,000 from Stan Kroenke to have the hometown boy up to replenish their town's museum. What do people really, really think? Like, they really think that Stan Kroenke is going to respond to some little town's email about their damn museum? He doesn't respond to Jay Nixon. You think he's going to respond to you and really care what your museum looks like? The roof of your museum needs to be repaired? I don't think that there's many owners that would care in the first place about that, but this is the last one that would care. You probably should have maybe gone at the Cardinals, who are known for helping out the town. Maybe something like that. Maybe just send a letter to the Rams organization. Maybe they'll throw it in their little charity bin and see what goes on from there. But if we're already begging a man for $250 million and he doesn't care, hasn't responded, so that he hasn't responded to these people doesn't really surprise me at all either. But then let's go back to the Joe Buck thing. As he went to the paper to talk to Joe Strauss, and this is what he said to Joe Strauss. I want to remind people that I'm my father's son, and my father would not have taken this lying down. I don't know anybody who did more getting out and embracing the community. I don't know what you would argue with, and he's talking about his Twitter rant here. I don't go on some drunken stupor. I think about it. This is big for a region. It's about more than the NFL. Again, reiterating, it's more about St. Louis. Now, the thing that he keeps going at that I don't understand, a lot of people do, this has been going on for a long time. But the initial response was like $100,000 to rebuild the dome. So this new stadium thing just didn't pop up out of nowhere. Because Stan Kroenke came back with $700,000, we were like, oh, we're not paying that. The arbitrator ruled it in our way. Oh, we're not doing that. And then he exercised his rights. So when he says the ball has been loading for a long time, longer than people realize, or even more than I initially realized. You can't base something off what people say in this situation. I didn't hear nothing about Dave Peacock when it was going from the $100,000 to Stan Kroenke's $700,000. I didn't hear nothing about Bob Blitz being a part of the stadium until after Stan Kroenke announced that he was going to do something in LA. So to say that the ball has been rolling longer than most of us know, because we pretty much knew it was going on about a month before they put it out there, and that the ball of Stan Kroenke's court has probably been rolling for a few years, but it's a lot easier to keep things like that on the low until something like this came up, and then now you can announce it, now show what we got going on, what we planned to maybe to either go to LA or use St. Louis as a ploy to get a $1 billion stadium. Now this is something that he shouldn't be surprised, since Kroenke has hired Fisher, he hasn't answered any question. He's like a ghost. The city isn't without blame. It would be hard-pressed to believe that the move to LA plan was dreamed up only when St. Louis wasn't ready to play ball, though. The powers that be in this city and Stan played a game of chicken. Neither pulled off to the side of the road. Ultimately, Stan has the power here. Now, that's not all the way true, unless he can lobby the owners. But then he has all the power. If St. Louis can show the NFL enough, going along with these stadium plans, the ball really becomes in the NFL's court, and St. Louis kind of has to follow along with the NFL. But the problem is, people have been telling these city leaders since 2008 that something needs to get done. Dan Dierdorf was saying, hey, looking at this lease, we maybe messed up. Probably should get something planning on, ahead of time. And that's before Stan Kroenke even had full ownership of the team. This is when, after Georgia Frontier died and the Rosenblues are running it. So these were the years after when they're horrible, and Dan Dierdorf said, hey, you're going to have to do something whether you like it or not. You're going to have to build, or at least do something to upgrade the facilities around here. I mean, if you drive by Earth City and drive by the Dome, you almost would rather them play at Earth City just from the looks on the outside and stuff. But obviously they can't play there. But the problem is, St. Louis has waited too long to worry about it. And then they get us all hyped up because they're like, oh, we're worried about it, we're worried about it. And then you go all the real research, and the only reason they're worried about it is because Stan Kroenke's moving to LA. And I'm not saying that he didn't plan this up in 2010 when he bought the team. But you gave him the chance to do it. Without the chance to do it, this never pops up. If you say, oh, we're not going to pay that $780 million to replenish the Dome, we'd rather build this new stadium on the riverfront. Now, if this has been working for so long, don't you think they would have had some kind of, backup plan other than $100,000, like maybe meet in the middle? No, they didn't have a backup plan. They went to an arbitrator and then lost, and then still didn't do nothing. So what they were going to do is they were going to sit down there and expect it to be, oh, the Rams suck. Why would they want anything better? Why would they want anything new? What's Stan Kroenke going to do? He said he's Missouri through and through. He said he wanted to keep the Rams here. That's what he was going to do. Well, he lied. You fell for the trap, like St. Louis politicians do. They fall for dumb, stupid traps. Oh, look at this. They're going to rebuild the city. Let's pay this guy a bunch of money, and the land's still sitting the same way it was. You dropped the ball. And now Francis Slay, and I could say like, Ranford, is not part of Slay Slap no more, but now he's part of this committee from St. Louis, the stadium thing. You don't think he's working hand in hand with Francis Slay? Of course he is. He's got the same time. He's still the chief, whatever he was, chief of staff. He's just got a new job now. He's got a more important job. But that just recently happened. You think it was a big deal that Chief Ranford would just now be moving away from that job and moving to help the city? No, they didn't think about it until Stan put out this $2 billion stadium. And they're like, oh, we're going to lose $10 million a year. Oh, we're going to lose all the benefits that the Rams bring us, everything that they help out in the community, the taxes and things like that. We're going to lose all that now. Uh-oh, we're going to lose money. Now it's time to make a ploy, as I would call it. And I just like how the stadium just keeps going up and up and up and up in price. It started at $960 million. Now it's up to $1 billion, basically $998. If they've added some things here and there. But you're late. You're late to the party. Now it does work out because on Wednesday, Kansas City Star's Van Gregorian, and I hope I didn't butcher his name too bad, he reported that Nixon and Peacock met Wednesday with Roger Goodell and various owners. Nixon's response, fans know the value of an NFL franchise in St. Louis, and they know the value of the land. Now, of course, Kansas City Star, he went to talk to a couple Chiefs people. Chiefs president, Mark Donovan, that's a hard answer, talking about the value of St. Louis being in a franchise, about the Rams being in St. Louis. Does that help the Chiefs out? That's a hard answer. It's hard to say and hard to predict what it would mean if the Rams are there or not. Now, owner Clark Hunt, and people play this one quote way out of proportion because he's on that league committee, the committee of LA relocation committee, whatever, just something crazy. The owner Clark Hunt said, I think it's positive for the Chiefs and the Rams having the Rams in the STL. Stay on the governor's good side. Stay on your state's good side. F the little politicians, Rob Shrimp and all them. I mean, what else is he going to say? And of course, people just took this out of, wow, he's one of the guys. He's going to keep it here. He's not going to do no more than what these other 5 owners that are with him in this. They all have to agree to something somewhere. And we don't know what kind of path they're on. We know that guy like Jerry Jones loves Stan Kroenke and thinks LA would be a benefit to the NFL. We also know there's other owners that want to follow the protocol. But it's all based on what the NFL tells them to do. And that's what we're not looking at. So, I mean, a guy like Clark Hunt can argue for St. Louis, but in the long run, is him fighting really beneficial to St. Louis? Or is he just not, is it beneficial to him to even fight for it if the other 5 owners say, hey, it's time to go back to LA, St. Louis is done. So it's just frustrating, and I talk about it a lot, and I really don't want them to go, but if it's gonna cause this kind of hassle to where, and you have a guy that's not gonna speak to you in any way or even let you know what's going on with your city or your town, then there's really no point to even worry about it. And that's the point I'm at, is where I'm not worried about it at all, because it shouldn't affect me one way or the other. Yeah, I lose football, but it wasn't my fault. They took that right from me when they took the vote, if I wanted it or not. And I want football here, but it's up to these politicians to get the ball rolling, and they waited too long. So as more information come out, we'll provide it for you here. But now we'll go to the Rams. And on the field as preseason ended, 0-4. You can't really look at the record of any franchise in the preseason. I think that the Colts are 0-16 in their last 4 seasons, or maybe it's 0-12 in the last 3. I mean, there's teams every year that have really good preseason. I think the Rams were like 3-1 one year and went 2-14. But the only thing that you've seen on offense is some bad bubble screens to Tavon and some halfway decent bubble screens to Tavon. The big difference is what you're seeing in the game, the first game at home, and I can't remember who the team was. I honestly don't care. Was what Chris Gibbons can do. And for a full year, basically, all he did was just run verticals, and they threw it deep. He caught the ball, touchdown. But the way you built your receiver core, you kind of have a bunch of what I would call Danny Amendola slot receivers. Probably not as fast as Amendola, in no way, but guys that can't run the vertical routes, guys are going to have to make, and I can't think of it now, but also slants and also the comeback routes. Like, that's what Kenny Britt is. He's a guy that's going to run you 10 yards, come back, get the cut down on. Brian Quick is a guy, go down, do the cutback route, and just throw it high and let him go up and get it. Stephen Bailey, another guy who can make the great catch, and is probably not as slow as these guys, but he's not the fastest guy in the world, so he's a guy you can't run vertical. And then Tavon, I don't know if he can't run vertical, if he's not as fast vertical, but they seem to just want to run these little bitty screens to him every here and there. And they did it on back-to-back plays in the last game against Kansas City. They ran him a bubble screen to one side, and he got stopped because Britt couldn't block. And then they run it back to the other side, and they couldn't block, and he ran circles all around the field and just got lucky that he got 40 yards. He had 2 passes all preseason for 78 yards on bubble screens, essentially, where he had to make his own thing. So that's obviously what they want him to be. So a guy like Chris Gibbons makes a big difference on what he can do throughout the season. If he can go out there, and I'm not saying be a guy that goes out there and gets 100 balls thrown to him, but I'm saying a guy that maybe can go out there and catch 4 or 5 deep passes for touchdowns, or maybe 10 all season. Maybe get up there to 10 touchdowns for the season. And that makes a big difference in this offense. I mean, Foles can sling it a little bit. He's proven that. And his best seasons for Bruni had 2 receivers that ran vertical routes, and Macklin and Deshaun Jackson. So that's the kind of, I'm not saying that he's going to be a Jeremy Macklin that Chris Gibbons could be, but he could be the guy that opens up the offense. And now with, Todd Gurley's not starting week 1. You got Mason that's got the hurt hamstring, so you're going to be in there with Benny and Benny Cunningham and Isaiah Peed. You're not really going to, I think, run the ball as much as you would if you had your 2 horses in there. So we'll probably see in the first game what kind of offense that the Rams can bring. And the Rams made some final cuts, which they actually made a couple cuts that surprised you. But, I mean, these are the 5 picks that surprised me a little bit. I didn't go through every one. They're down to 53. But they released Austin Davis for Case Keenum. Now, unique quarterback play. You've had a struggle with your quarterbacks staying healthy. You have a makeshift offensive line with a bunch of rookies and a bunch of nobodies, as is. 1- and 2-year players. And a guy that played very well for you that had basically the same stats Nick Foles had last season, and you let him go for Case Keenum. And I'm not even getting into the Sean Mannion war, because you weren't getting rid of your 3rd round pick in any way. This doesn't make any sense. But I just don't understand the fascination with Case Keenum for this team. Are they really trying to mess with us? Like, to think they're like, oh my God, we're just so much smarter than the fans. They clamor for Austin Davis too much. They like Austin Davis. Get him out of here. And that's really what I'm starting to think is going on. Just take players that could actually make a contribution to a team that needs it, and they get rid of them. I just don't see it in Case Keenum. I really don't. I don't understand it. He was good for 2 games with the Texans and then fell off to where they put back in a beating down Matt Schwab. Then we sign him and release him. He's on our practice squad all year. We release him. Houston picks him back up, does nothing with him, and then we go back and bring him back for a 7th round. That's just things that don't make sense to me. And I mean, it just seems like they think that they're just the smartest personnel guys ever in the NFL. That, oh, we made the right decision. We always make the right decision. We put the best, and I just don't understand. I just don't understand. I wouldn't be surprised if Austin Davis ended up on the Eagles. A little bit of speed. Plus, he can sling it a little bit, throw the deep ball. And he played pretty good for a crappy Rams team with no wide receivers. I mean, the best wide receiver he had last year was Kenny Britt. Kenny Britt! That's the best receiver he had last year. And he played better than any of your other quarterbacks did. I wouldn't have mind, really wouldn't have been that big of a problem if maybe Nick Foles and Austin Davis had a quarterback competition or something like that this year. Even if you go back to the stats, and I brought them up on this show before, Nick Foles and Austin Davis had basically the same stats last year. And now they just all of a sudden think that Case Keenum is that much better than Austin Davis. That means he might be better than Nick Foles. So I just don't understand a thing. Now we go to cornerback. Within your best cornerback, probably your best slot cornerback, we'll say. Because the other guys, they for some reason want to go out and get the Johnson and Jenkins just want to go for the interception every play instead of knocking the ball. Well, they probably would be halfway decent cornerbacks. But you released your best guy from the preseason, the first 3 games, in Claiborne. And now you just released the depth guy. Now you've got 4 wide receivers on the roster, or 4 cornerbacks on the roster. So if someone gets injured, you're pretty much going to a safety at that point, and their excuse is, we got flexibility at safety. I mean, that's just how much they think of this great secondary that we have. They just see just more things. Sad to see Daniel Rodriguez go. I said this was my surprise list, but I wanted to mention his name. A vet. Went all the way to the preseason. Maybe he deserved all 4 games, but give the guy a chance. Let him go out there and do what he wants to do after he served your country. And some of the wars that he talked about that he was involved with. At least give him the chance. He'll probably end up on the practice squad, either if not with the Rams, with some team. Now, a guy I was clamoring on for about 3 years to get rid of, the Rams finally get rid of him, is Jolan Dunbar. Now, if you watched the Rams through probably the last half of the season last year, you've seen that Jolan Dunbar's plays, which he was in there basically just to come in and blitz the quarterback and make the tackles on the run, had kind of went to Mark Barron. As Mark Barron came in, stood down there in the box, basically looked like a linebacker or a defensive end, and most of the time blitzed the quarterback or was down there to stop the run. So Jolan Dunbar's spot was basically taken over already by Mark Barron. But, of course, you have to have your reservations about certain guys like that. And then they also released Barrett Jones, a guy who couldn't get on the field. He wasn't getting a lot of player time in the preseason, even though he was supposedly fighting for 2 of the open positions, center and left guard. So, that pretty much tells you what they thought about him in the beginning, and that's what they think about him now, is that he just couldn't cut it. But the Rams got enough depth. They got a guy like Garrett Reynolds who provides depth. They got a couple other younger guys that are probably going to switch around in there. Jamon Brown's one of them. I can't think of everybody's name right now. Tim Barnes, Demarius Rainey. So a lot of guys in there to mix and match. And you also keep a lot of your younger talent around, keeping guys like Jamon Brown and Darius Rainey around. But you didn't see a whole lot of really let go of defense. And that's going to be the key for the Rams this season, is defense and Chris Gibbons. And it's going to be your cornerbacks. Definitely without a guy like Gaines in there to kind of hold the fort down and give that offensive or that defensive front 4 time to make it to the quarterback. And then we'll see what they do on offense. Definitely at week 1 if they don't have Mason or Gurley. But once Gurley gets in there. Because that's going to open up the pass game a little more to have a guy in there that you know this team's going to rush. And the Rams like to use the play action a lot more than most teams. And that's going to be big for you if you can kind of show them something different in the running game to where you can get guys open like Givens. Get them little comeback routes on third downs from Britt and Quick. But the problem is this: you're going to be your tight end, and Jared Cook is just hard to trust, and Lance Kendricks is hard to trust. You signed Jared Cook to all this money for him to go out there and drop wide open passes right to him, or passes basically to save your quarterback passes where he hits you in the hands and it bounces off and it causes an interception. So what you really want is hope the right receivers get open before Jared Cook gets open. So my prediction on the Rams, most predictions are about 8 wins. And looking at their schedule, I just can't see it. I honestly think that they could be 0-5 after the first 5 weeks of the season. We're starting off with Seattle, and you got some other grungy games in there where this team could be struggling right out of the gates. But it's all going to pertain for the offense. You know what this defense do. It's just the offense going to move past the rut it's been in for the past few seasons. Alright, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Cardinals next, right here on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. Tweet me at rbowlesbyjr or tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. And we're going to go to the Cardinals now. And I'm laughing because it's the same crap every week with this team. You look at these other teams and man, the Pirates were struggling before they came in here, and the Cubs were struggling last week. And yet the Cardinals are either winning games or the bullpen falters in games that we were already losing. But over the past couple weeks, and really the last week, your offense has jumped up a little bit. And the funny thing, it's mostly been Brandon Moss and Mark Reynolds, and it's not a funny thing. I was one proclaiming that Reynolds needed a break. That people need to leave Reynolds out of the situation because all he really needed was just a little break. And the Moss trade provided that for him. Brandon Moss, with him, it just looked like a comfort level. Like he was maybe pressing it a little bit, going up there trying to get the big home run and striking out a lot. But then you see him once he hit that big home run to walk it off, it's been a whole different Brandon Moss. For both of them, over the last 15 games, Brandon Moss has been here 29 games. He hit 271 in them 29 games, so not even a bad average for him per se. If you look at it, I think his average only now is at 228. Over the last 15, 390, 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, no home runs in his previous 15 games. On base percentage of 479 with a slugging of 780. Over his last 7 now. This is when the offense has really jumped up, and you really haven't had a problem with the offense. It's just the one game you lose to Pittsburgh in here is errors in the bullpen. And then you lost the game to not the Diamondbacks, but I think it was the Giants, where it just got away from you a little bit with the starting pitching. It has to happen once or twice, somewhere down the road, because it hasn't happened at all this season. But over his last 7, Brandon Moss, 462 average. That's 12 of 26, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, slugging .923 with an on-base of .517. Well, there's that bad trade everybody talks about, that how many games Rob Kaminsky has won for, yeah. So, it's just funny, most of these trades always work out. There's not many trades that this Cardinals team has made in a long time that haven't worked out. I mean, McGuire, Edmonds, Woody Williams, Edwin Jackson, Mark Rusimski, picking up Arthur Rhodes off the side of the road. And that wasn't a pun, but somehow it worked. Like, your worst one's been the last two signees you got, which was Ellis and Mark Reynolds. Or, Mark Reynolds, excuse me. Mark Ellis and Ty Wigginton. And then people were kind of worried about Mark Reynolds too. Well, then you just go back, and since he's gotten this break, Moss has been here for 29 games. Tonight will make his 30th game. Reynolds, in them 30 games, 275, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. His last 15, with this little bit of extended break, 326, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, slugging .535 on base of .420. Them aren't Mark Reynolds' numbers. But over the last week, it gets even better. Now, he's had a slightly less at bats, 12, 13 less at bats than Brandon Moss, but he's rolling right there with them. .429, 6 for 14, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, slugging .643 on base of .556. He needed a break. I don't know how many, you can look at it in every way and see that when Mark Reynolds played and had 500 at-bats, this is what you were going to get out of Mark Reynolds. Was the 222, the big strikeouts, and hope he hits one every now and then. Now, he's still at that point where he's just now hitting one every now and then, but he's getting on base, and he's not having a lot of trouble at the field since he's gotten this break. I mean, he's been playing third to give Carpenter a break. Mostly Moss has been taking his outfield spots, but you haven't really heard him complain about Reynolds at first in a while. And it just shows you that some guys do work better on a lesser schedule. And he's one of them guys. And when you put him in there for an extended period of time, guys get to see him a lot and they get used to him, and all the computer work that they do now and all the scouting reports they do, they're going to figure out a way to get him out. And in a lineup where that wasn't producing, it looked really bad. But as you see over the last 30 games, 275 since we got Moss. Moss, over the 29 games he's been here, 271. So we went from nitpicking one of them to nitpicking both of them, and both of them been producing. And once Moss got that first home run over the wall, you pretty much seen that he's been a whole different hitter. I really don't think it was much about the injury as they want to say, and that's just mumbo jumbo, big league talk. Oh yeah, blah blah blah, back injury that hasn't healed up. I think he was uncomfortable. I think he was pressing it, and I think that affected him. I mean, I honestly think the same thing happened with Reynolds at first too. But now that he's in a situation, they know their jobs, they know what they're out there to do. Reynolds, you got to hit the lefties. Moss, you got to hit the righties. And when we need you to platoon with somebody, we'll put you in there. And it's pretty much been your offense. You have Carpenter jumping in there and hitting the home runs. Also, too, he's up over 20 home runs this year. You're going to have to find and I keep saying it, but you got to find a happy medium with that. Definitely with the average being where it is, you're going to have to find a happy medium with him hitting probably 10 to 13 home runs and batting probably in the 280s. I don't think you're going to get another 20 home run season. I also don't think you're going to get another 260 batting average season from a guy that's proved he can hit. And I think it's just mostly of when they moved him down, I think that affected his approach to hitting. He was trying to hit with more power. And I think now that he knows that he can hit with that power, I think that's where it's kind of mixing him up, is that he doesn't know if he should hit for power or he should hit to get on base. And I'll take either one. Essentially, he's 261, like I said. But it's just funny to see some of these older players start to pick it up that have been here for a while when a guy like Reynolds and Moss picks it up. And for some reason, this team's just not hitting for an eye average. And I think that's what we're getting confused about is we think the offense is coming around, but we don't see it in the average. But you got to look at the home runs and the spike in the runs per game. But your tough key down the stretch is going to be bringing all these players back and giving them positions and places to play, the John Jays, while also making sure you keep rookies sharp like Piscotty, and when Grichuk comes back, and Grichuk, but when you're going to get Holiday and Adams back, I really honestly, with Moss on the team, don't know what you're really going to do with Brandon Moss. With Adams back on the team, I don't really know what you're going to do with Brandon Moss. Because you know about the love affair that Matheny has with some of his players, and that he's going to put Adams in there when Adams comes back. He's going to play a lot of John Jay. You're going to see that. But so is a guy like Piscotty going to stay on this playoff roster? When he doesn't have the at-bats, when he's not going to get the at-bats that's probably needed for him to stay effective. He's a big league player, that's no doubt. He's proven that. Enough of the sample size to prove it so far. But if he doesn't have a position to play, what are you going to do with him? Because I don't just think you're going to back down on Moss and Reynolds, because them are the guys that have been doing it to you for you all season. But you know how he is with players that he kind of falls in love with, like John Jay, basically anybody. I mean, all of his bullpen, you see him mostly in the bullpen, is what I should have premised that with, is you know he has kind of, I don't know how to explain it, I can't really, not a love affair, but loyalty. He's real loyal to his players that have done it for him. And they've been on this roster and done the things the whole year. So it's going to be hard, I think, for him to go from a guy like Adams, Holiday, John Jay, Jason Hayward, and replace them in the lineup with a guy like Steven Piscotty, and maybe even sometimes Randall Grichuk. Because they know what Jay can do. They know that he can go out there and he can be a 300 hitter, but you don't know what he can do off the bench. And you don't know if Grichuk provides enough of that offense to keep this team steady. Now, I'm not saying put John Jay in there. Randall Grichuk plays center field, no doubt about it. Maybe he platoons with Piscotty in some way, and Jay just becomes your official bench guy. Maybe it works out somewhere like that. But I think you do have to worry about what you're going to get from Piscotty if you don't give him the playing time to kind of keep in the rhythm he's been going with so far this season. We'll move on to the pitching now, and there's this thing Mike Matheny, and I've said this probably every show too, how they like to say things to make you think it's not going to happen, but you should know it's going to happen. And now they're playing around saying that Ty Lai might come in there and get a start, maybe Tim Cooney. You've seen Marco up here too, he got a start. And it's just something that's the inevitable is going to happen. And it really gets bigger when they go out there and a guy like Scott Boras does the thing with Matt Harvey and say, hey, you said you were going to put him on this limit. We want him at this limit, but we want him to pitch in the playoffs. So you need to start hoarding him now. And he's not too happy about it, of course. The Mets don't know what to do. They're not happy about it, of course. But it's kind of just in St. Louis, a real quiet thing. And mostly because it's not the big name like Matt Harvey that had Tommy John. It's coming back off that, and looks like he was going to be the next great pitcher. But Michael Walker and Carlos Martinez are pretty good too. And I kind of seen it going on, but I think it should go on a little more. Where you let Martinez start, and then you don't let him start. You skip a start and let him start after that. But in between there, maybe on the 4th day and the 6th day, he goes out there and throws an inning or two. Just to keep him from tensing up, getting, I forgot what they call it. I'm having a bad show today, but that's okay. But tightening up, like his shoulder and stuff tightening up to where he can't go out there and make his next start. You keep him loose. Like, giving him a release for appearance or two here and there. And then bring him back into playoffs, which I don't think they're going to do. I think that you're going to see a lot less of Walker down the stretch, and you're going to see a lot more of Martinez, because they're moving Martinez to the bullpen. It's just the inevitable smartest thing to do. And maybe for that first series, they just run out there the 3 starters that without Walker Martinez. Maybe they just run out there Lynn, Lackey, and Jaime. And I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that. My slight problem would be running Lynn out there against the Pirates. So you kind of hope the Cubs win. And you're kind of glad Wainwright ain't on this roster if the Cubs win, because his last 2 bad starts were against the Cubs. So the Cardinals always make this kind of stuff work. Usually they take it out of the playoffs. But with all the scrutiny they've gotten over the last few years for doing that, I think that's what they're trying to slow down, trying to keep the pressure off Mike to have to do that and kind of just have their own little system going. Which is fine with me. I think it should already happen. I think you should have lowered Martinez's innings down a while ago. Wacha I wasn't too worried about except for that stress fracture crazy injury thing he had, but it hasn't seemed to affect him this season. So I don't think he was the guy you were having to worry about, because he's pitched these kind of stressful innings before as a starter and with as many innings as he got. Martinez hasn't. Not in the big leagues. Maybe he did in the minor leagues. I think the most they ever said he pitched, and that's even with winter ball, was like 160 innings, and I think he's on pace for pretty close to 200. So Martinez is going to the bullpen. It's just going to happen because you're not going to put Jaime there. You can't put Lackey there because he might kill you. Literally, he might just try to kill you, and then you can't really put Lynn there because you know the quality pitcher that Lynn is. Now, would I like to see Lynn in the bullpen against the Pirates? I would love it, but it's just not going to happen. And you kind of hope that the Cardinals go into that first series and maybe just do that to keep the innings down. Now you move them to the National Championship Series, and now you got your 5 guys healthy. You pick the 4 guys you want to go, and let's go out there and get it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk some Blues next, but we're going to start off with weird news right here on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. Tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. Find us on Facebook and YouTube at Greater STL, that's one word, Sports Network, or on Ustream under rbowlesbyjr. Alright, let's get into some weird news as people are having a little crisis as they think McDonald's all-day breakfast is going to hurt the egg crisis that's going on. I don't know. I think McDonald's only uses real eggs as one of their eggs. Because I used to work there. It's probably 90% of the world did. And one egg, you just pour it out of it looks like a milk jug. A half a gallon of milk, you just pour it in this little circle hole. And by law, they call that scrambled eggs. And then you got the folded egg, which comes in a frozen pack. And boom. They're great. But that's just the world. Oh, we got an egg crisis. Oh, they're going to all-day breakfast at McDonald's. They're going to affect and hurt the egg crisis. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But we'll move on from that. Is in South Carolina. Spencer's gift store employee saw 19-year-old Taylor Ogman approach the bondage section and put something in her purse. The item? A fantasy bed stretcher valued at $39.99. Its purpose? To turn your bed into a suitable area for a dungeon of pleasure. Police were called and they later found out that Ogman also stole $84 worth of panties from Victoria's Secret. Officer took him to return the underwear to the store. Taylor Ogman was jailed and booked on 2 counts of shoplifting and was released. Maybe she was having a bad relationship. She was trying to maybe spice something up a little bit. But you gotta hope for maybe it was like a lesbian relationship. Oh, that would have been great. They gotta get more of these stories. I mean, was she going to use it for herself and her man, or was she buying it for her lover? Was she going to strap a girl on there and they were going to do the Dungeons of Pleasure? Alright, moving on. In Anchorage, Alaska, a woman stole a cop car her husband was in after he was arrested at a pawn shop. Police realized the car was gone after he was distracted by another motorist. Amber Woodwood of Anchorage saw that the cop was distracted, jumped into the cop car, and drove off. Troopers later discovered the probe car with no damage, nothing stolen, including the handcuffs. The handcuffs were still there. I don't know if they really worry too much about the handcuffs. Trooper lost a search that included helicopters and canine units, but the search was halted after 7 hours, and no sign of the suspects. The police were then tipped Thursday of the Waterford's whereabouts, and both were arrested. Miss Waterford was set at $20,000 bail for suspicion of vehicle theft and other charges. She is no longer in custody. And that's a ride or die bitch right there. Steal a cop car, and I guess his keys were in there. Got you out of the cop car, then you made it home, I guess. But I don't know if you would run home, if that's the smartest place to go. But wouldn't you think that would be the first place the cops would look? Was like at your house? And I know Alaska's a big non-rural area, lots of snow, lots of non-drivable roads. But what? That's the kind of girl you want to steal a cop car to get you out of trouble. Alright, back to the Cardinals. This is a story that kind of popped up on NBC Sports. And I'm going to give you another story to read. This just tells you how cops are. And a report released from Vice Sports, St. Louis cops seized 2,000 World Series tickets from scalpers and they used them to go to the games themselves. The detail seized 98 tickets from 44 arrests. 34 of the tickets, or 35%, were given by the arresting officers to their family or friends. 8 of the 18 detectives who were on the detail reappropriated the tickets. Confiscated scalp tickets were used for all 3 home games of the World Series, often mere hours after the arrest and seizures. The cops were eventually busted after a long investigation by the Internal Affairs. Their downfall was one cop overheard talking on the phone about it, and the fact barcodes that are scanned, that info tends to live forever because it goes to the cloud, the big cloud. It's where everything goes, where everything seems to go to the cloud. But I got another story here for you to read. It's in the Post-Dispatch. Just look it up. Cash and bail and jail fees penalize the poor in municipal court. And I won't get no more involved in that. But in that story, it's North County cops, and that's my big thing is to kill North County. Not kill, no, I shouldn't say it like that. It's to berate North County cops into their wrongdoings and let them know that they're wrong. They know they're wrong, and they don't really care if they get away with it. Playing out there on the highway and everything that the cops do. And this was another story involving the cops I usually complain about. But ain't it messed up? A lot of these cops get to go to the games anyways for security detail. Definitely at the World Series. I wouldn't doubt half the police task force for St. Louis City was down there. And that's probably the cops that gave to their friends and family. But they weren't even putting the evidence in or nothing. They were taking them and using them. And where does that evidence go? You keep the ticket stub and you take it back to the office when you're done? It's just funny that these kind of stories come out about the Cardinals too. You heard nothing about the Cardinals doing anything wrong and forever, and then all of a sudden the story that seemingly went away in the Cardinals version of Spygate. The Rams have one, the Cardinals have one. Next is the Blues. The Blues should get one here soon. It should be against them if we go in order, because it was the Patriots spying, then you had the Cardinals spying. Now you should have someone spying on the Blues. It just shows you where the cops are in this town. And Our town. For a hometown rundown, I'll give you a quick one. St. Louis FC didn't play a week, and River City made it to the playoffs, and they get a home game in the playoffs, so good for them. And they're a good offensive team. If that bullpen ever really catches up, and they were pitching pretty well over the last few weeks, but the bullpen has been the downfall for that team. It hasn't been the offense. That team's basically been the opposite of the Cardinals. Mediocre starter pitching, horrible bullpen, but just amazing offense. Taylor Ard and Brian Hansen. The two guys, Brian Hansen leading the league with like a 371 average. Taylor's got 25 plus home runs. So just a team that you could tell offensively is not challenged, but bullpen wise is very challenged. Alright, we'll move on to Mizzou SEMO as Mizzou blew out SEMO 34-3. And hey, could have won with SEMO there, covered your spread. Got you a nice little parlay going. You knew a couple games. And this ain't a team that's going to put up a bunch of points without getting a lot of turnovers. So just based on that, it's kind of scary that you're going to go with some of these SEC teams that can score and that aren't going to turn the ball over. You know, teams like Alabama and all that, they're not really big at messing up their offense. Usually a lot of runs, a lot of screens, a lot of short passing. More of a West Coast offense for some of them teams. And them are the teams you're going to have to get turnovers against. And, you only got one turnover in this game. It went for a touchdown as Kendall Brothers was all over the place. 16 tackles and a block punt. You had a really good defensive stand for the team. Now you got to worry about the offense because they were against SEMO. Russell Hansbrook goes out after 2 carries for 23 yards. After that, 31 carries for 65 yards. That's not going to be acceptable. Definitely when you're playing SEMO or any other of these other teams. You got lucky. SEMO is very offensively challenged. But this is a team that's going to have to run the ball with who you got at quarterback. And the big thing is going to be all season is how long Matty Mock's going to stay in there. Because you have Matty Mock and you got Drew Lock. And Drew Lock, he showed he can throw the deep ball even though he got lucky. The guy was wide open. But, he proved he can sling it a little bit. You go Mock 12 for 22, 181, 8.2 average, 2 touchdowns, interception, rating of 64.8. Lock 6 of 10, 138, 13-point average, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 84 average. So, you're playing SEMO. You probably wore that team out, your big team. You're going to get that big touchdown, but it's not like that he was going out there and just killing it. 6 of 10 and only 84 quarterback rating. And then you go on Twitter and somehow the Mizzou game started trending, and you read why it's trending, and it's everybody complaining that they want Drew Lock in there. Give the Matty Mock a shot. He does hold on the ball. He does make stupid passes when the defensive's coming at him. But he has a problem with throwing off his back foot, which you're always taught not to do. But it seems like quarterbacks these days, it actually works really good for the quarterbacks on the screen. Is they act like they're going to throw it deep and they call it their back foot and just lob it in their running back. It works a lot for that kind of thing. But you can't do it when you're trying to throw 10, 15-yard balls. You're not going to get enough oomph on it, and it causes interceptions. But you got to give the guy a chance. You got to give the guy a chance to learn. He's only been a full starter for 1 year, and I know you do a lot of scrimmages and you do a lot of this and that. You have them little scrimmage games they got on TV. The black and gold games. I think it's in Missouri. Other teams it's like red and white. You know how they roll. But that's his preseason against his own team, and he might get hit a little bit. But it's not like everything's full speed. It's not like they're going to blitz and hit you every play. It's the first game of the season. You're winning 34-3. Give the guy a chance. Let him show what he can do before you're like, Lock for president. Lock's the greatest. I'm basing my stuff off what I've seen for 1 year, 1 game. Bring Drew Lock in. You can't have it. Definitely with them winning with Matty Mock in. Show me Drew Lock and we don't play him this year, but show me Drew Lock in any of the SEC games. Show me Drew Lock in that BYU game. Don't come here and say, oh, Drew Lock needs to be the quarterback when he's playing against SEMO in the first game of the season. I mean, yeah, he looked better than Matty Mock did. And Matty Mock still got you 34 points and put up the win for you. Wasn't all that efficient, but drove the ball down the field. But you got to give the guy a chance to kind of get to game speed. You can't just sit here and just let him say, oh man, first game of the season, he sucks. Blah, blah, blah. Put Drew Lock in. You only saw Drew Lock for 3 plays before people were clamoring for him to come in, and then he came in and he had the 78-yard touchdown. But it's not like he went out there and lit it up, like he was just going deep pass after deep pass after deep pass. And obviously they had to pass it, 31 carries on 65 yards. That's not going to cut it, so you have to throw the ball to move the ball. So he was in a situation where he was almost made to look better with Mizzou not having a chance really to run the ball than if he was put in the same situations that Matty Mock are playing. But it's nice to see Mizzou get the win against SEMO. You got to win these 4 games against these crappy teams. I don't like it. I always complain about it. But in the first game of the season, I can understand it, though. Definitely with no preseason. Yeah, let's buy preseason SEMO. But after that, schedule somebody. Schedule out, I don't know if they can get them, but try to schedule in Illinois, even though they're not that great. Try to schedule a different team. I know the Big 12 is probably not messing with you, but if you got to go low, maybe like a Cal. Something like that. Something with a name. Something in the FBS. Something to kind of get you excited to go and watch football. To make people want to watch. It's exciting because it's the first game of the year to watch Mizzou versus SEMO, but next week's not going to be that fun. And I think they got Purdue in there. You don't hear big things about Purdue, but you got BYU, though. You kind of like that game later in the season, and you just kind of hope they don't go out there and crush Mizzou, because that's going to look real bad on your resume. If you go into that game maybe with a halfway decent record and a chance you lose to BYU, you're kind of hurting yourself in a situation. If you go out there and get crushed, and it's a lot different now without that stupid computer system they got going on, whatever it was called. But you're not going to get, they push certain teams. And a lot of it's pushed from your division that you're in, the SEC. And maybe not where you're exactly at. I think they're in the West. The East is pushed a lot more than the West. But then you also got to make it past the teams like, that have the experience in the big games, like FSU, and teams that people are going to love, like Notre Dame. Notre Dame's record is going to look 10 times better than Mizzou's ever would, just because they're Notre Dame. And that's just the way it rolls. And it's not like it's fair or not fair. But before the last 2 seasons, maybe the last 10 years, Mizzou was nothing. You had nothing to build on. And all these other teams that are up there now have been building, and have had, even though Notre Dame went through a stretch where they had 4 or 5 bad seasons in the Charlie Weiss era, once they got good again, it was, oh my God, here's Notre Dame, they're back. It's time. It's put them back in the championship. Alabama, the Auburns, teams like that. If a team like Georgia gets good, their reputation's going to surpass yours and hurt your chances. So there's just certain things that Mizzou needs to do to put themselves in situations to where it makes them look better going into the championship. Like battling better teams in SEMO. But it's nice to get a win, nice to start the season right. And it's kind of crazy, you got college football starting this week, NFL first game next week, Rams in Seattle, and then less than a month from now, Mizzou and SLU's back. So there's just going to be so much going on. And then, Cardinals playoffs, too. The Blues are going to be, in training camp and turning around to come in. I think they start in October. So a lot of stuff going on in sports. Perfect for this great show. Speaking of the Blues, if you didn't hear, Patrick Berglund, my favorite player, injured, going to miss 4 months re-injuring something, and there is a celebration to be made there. It's, God, I'm so happy that someone else is going to get a shot to replace this guy. I mean, he gives you absolutely nothing. A big guy that's not that physical. He doesn't score anymore. He's not the greatest passer in the world. They always try to say, "Oh, he's such a great passer." Well, he doesn't get a whole lot of points for you. He did play very, very well in the playoffs. I will give him that. But I think it's time to move on. Find somebody else. Now they brought in veterans. Kyle Broziak. They also now brought in Scott Gomez, who's a guy that is a sleeper guy. Like, he's the guy that you go, like, you don't hear his name a lot. You're like, man, he just doesn't be that good of a player. And then he comes in, plays 50 games for a team, gets 30-something points, and you're like, wow, you sure that's Scott Gomez? What he did for New Jersey last year. But now you got a guy like Scotty Upshaw, Colton Petrenko, Thomas Bernal, Ken Hitchcock, when asked about Robbie Fabry, does he have a chance to make it? He said that's all on Robbie. Ty Ratty most likely is going to make it. But it gives other guys a shot. Other than just giving this guy that's basically giving you nothing but a roster filler. Because you can't go out there and get better talent because you're pushed up against the salary cap with a team that's always in the red. So you're not going to go out there and spend a bunch of money unless you have that player already in your system, like we did with Tarasenko. And you spent pretty good money on... and really I can't say that because they spent really good money on Paul Stastny. But then you have to give yourself some relief there with the Tarasenko thing and with the Stastny thing by getting rid of a guy that makes $3 million more than the guy you traded for, TJ Oshie for Troy Brouwer. And that relief could give you a chance to get rid of a guy like Berglund, and maybe let one of these other guys start, and then now you have money to pay the Schwartzes of the world, the Allens, the Brian Elliott's if you want to keep him around maybe. And it's funny to hear how people they're so worried about this goaltending. There's people that think that the guy that's been doing great in Chicago, Jordan Benton, is going to be a player in that goalie controversy by the end of the year. So people are already worried about the goaltending, and they're not even worried about what's going to happen on lines. And now, I'm not going to say, because Patrick Berglund does win faceoffs when he plays center, where I think his main position should be. He should be a center. So you're hoping that you can find a guy, one of these guys come out, and be that guy that can get you faceoffs. I mean, he's probably good for being a big body down low, for, kind of blocking off the goalie on shots from the defenseman and from the point from the other wingers. So maybe you got a guy like that. Maybe that's Scott Gomez's job. Maybe that's why they brought in a veteran, a guy that's already knows what to do and how to get there. So, is the Berglund injury a big deal? Maybe. Yeah, because you don't know what else you got. But I think it's a smaller deal compared to now you get a chance to see what you got. And if them guys aren't effective during training camp, you bring in a guy like Scott Gomez to solidify, get a veteran out there, know what he's doing, and maybe help this team out like guys like these guys you brought in the past. So it's gonna be a little worrisome over that first few weeks to see what you're gonna get out of your last two lines, your third and fourth line, because you pretty much know what you're gonna get out of the first two. Alright, that's going to do it. Until next time that we talk to you, this is Robert Bowlesby, and this has been Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network.